listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifestor Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you were born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. I have a really fascinating guest today, Sharon Lynn Wyeth. She's going to tell us about the importance of our names. And according to her, our names tell us about who we are, our spirituality, healing, and the best things that we should do in life. So you'll learn about names, how to interact with other people, and how they influence relationships, health, and personal preferences. Let me tell you about Sharon. Sharon Lynn Wyeth is an internationally recognized name expert. She can determine one's strength, challenges, and the purpose of one's life by deciphering a person's name. Sharon created mnemology science, the study of the placement of the letters in the name, after 15 years of research. She assists HR business departments to narrow down candidates to be interviewed and to communicate better. Sharon also creates names for new businesses, new products, and when people wish to change their name. She's written several best-selling books and is a frequent guest on radio and television. You can find her at www.knowthename.com. So welcome, Sharon. It's so good to have you here.
Julia, it's such a pleasure to join you.
I'm really excited about this because I always find this so interesting. But let's tell our listeners what's in a name and why is it important?
First of all, when you introduce yourself to somebody else and somebody says, "Who are you?" you answer with your name as if that says it all. And if you know namology science, it definitely does. It gives you that in full picture. The personality, what their feelings, thoughts, actions will probably be according to any situation. It gives the soul's purpose. It says how we learn, what kind of gifts we like, what will cause us to have a long-term friendship versus a short-term friendship, how we show love, how we receive love. There's so much information in a name. And all of that is blasting out to the universe the minute you state your name.
Right. So that's exciting. So we have a whole lot to learn today, but namology is actually like the placement of the letters in your name. So I guess every letter has a meaning. Can you tell us how that works?
Every letter has a meaning and it depends on its placement. So the first vowel in the first name has a lot of information, and it's so important because that shows how we connect with other people and how we learn. And anyway, there's so much that literally I've got that available for free access on my website for your listeners, any page but the home page. And then the first letter in the first name is the first impression that we have of somebody. And the last letter in the first name is our lasting impression. And then the middle letters are the subtleties. You know, we have to get to know somebody longer and able to know those things. And then just like if you're sitting next to somebody you like, you may be acting one way. But if you're sitting next to somebody you don't care for, you may be acting totally differently. And it's the same thing with the letters. They go next to each other, then they'll act on how they like, you know, and if they're not, and some letters don't get along. So for an example, let's take a C and an H. The C is controlling, charismatic, to cover their need to be in charge and in control. Okay. So it's always like it's got to be my way because that's how it works best. And then the H is what I call the holy letter, and you go with the flow. Okay. You get in the river and you see where it takes you. So if you put the C, which wants to be in charge and in control, next to the H, which is let go and let God, can you see there's going to be a conflict?
Yes.
And so the people with a CH in their name, whether it's at the start of their name, like a Cheryl, or in the middle, like a Michael, or at the end, like like some names like Micah, it doesn't matter. The C next to the H says that you're going to do things the hard way because you're always fighting within yourself. Am I supposed to hold on, or am I supposed to let go? And how much control do I have? And how much do I have to give away?
So that would explain why I've known a lot of Charles who were successful, but were introverted and had trouble communicating.
Well, they do everything the hard way because they're always battling within.
Because they're conflicted.
Yes.
That's really fascinating.
So the placement of the letters next to each other is important. Then the first name, Julia, is the essence of who we are. The middle name is where we go when we go under stress. Now, the reason for that is because that indicates what we learned in our most immediate past life. And so it's what we're coming forward, what talents were coming in, and anything that we didn't finish. And then the last name represents our environmental influence. So you get both nature in the first name and nurture in the last name.
That's fascinating because my middle name is after the great-great-grandmother that I was named after. So evidently I still have some of her karmic or hereditary struggles according to that, or reaction.
Well, or that could have been you.
Yeah, it could have been me. I was having that same thought. She is very intuitive. She doesn't just do these letters. She has a deep intuition with it. I know because I've talked to her before. So let's just throw out a few names. What about Denise? How does that name read?
So all the nieces are not the same. It really depends on the last name and what their environmental influence is. But they all start with the same ingredients. It's like being in your kitchen and you have certain ingredients and you can decide what to make out of those ingredients. And the recipes are in the last name and the ingredients are in the first name. So like for the same ingredients in your kitchen, you could make a scrambled eggs, you could make a quiche, you could make an omelet. There's a lot of different things you could do. Okay. So the same thing. So in the name Denise, it says that this person is basically generous. This person loves to give advice. She's a very good listener, and she will, everybody will come dump their problems on her. And then one of her challenges will be, well, we could do this or we could do that. And she's inserting herself in there. And then she's got more stuff to do than what's on her own plate. And so one of the challenges is learning how to give suggestions and then say, so what are you going to do next? You hand it back nicely. But she would be smart, able to learn from others, and very independent, and also have an aesthetic eye, also have some clutter around her.
That's so fascinating. What about your name? Now you've changed yours from Sharon to Sharon. Tell us about that.
Well, when my mother, starts telling the story about, your name and how we gave your name and all of that, she says that I didn't talk until I could talk in sentences. And the first sentence out of my name was, "You got my name wrong." and so I think it's ironic now, considering what I'm doing. But anyway, when she would call me Sharon, I would get mad. I would say, that's not my name. And I tried every variation of Sharon that I could find until I was, kept trying different things, trying to find my rightful name. And when I was in fourth grade, I was going by Sherry at the time. And the teacher said, we have 3 Sherrys in this classroom. And she looked at me and she said, and your real name is Sharon, so you're going to have to go by that, And that's what I really liked my fourth grade teacher. So that's when I started going by Sharon. So my mother went to this wedding. And in the wedding, it said on paper Sharon, but the rabbi pronounced it Sharon. So she called me up and she said, that's not a derivation that you've tried. Could this be it? And when she said it, my whole body vibrated. And I went, isn't this ironic? My mom, who remembered that I was always complaining she'd given me the wrong name, is now correcting it.
And I'm sure there's people who feel that way too. It's not just you.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very appreciative of that. And in certain parts of the world around the Middle East, especially, Sharon is pronounced Sharon.
Interesting. So what does your name mean? I'm just curious.
Well, Sharon or Sharon would mean that you want a lot of freedom. Freedom is very important to you. That we're basically, it's important to be intelligent or keep learning, that we can learn from anybody, that we are workaholics, but we make great couch potatoes at the end of the day, that we have fairness issues. We want the world to be fair. We can stand up for others a lot better than we can stand up for ourselves, that we're highly observant. We don't miss much, but at the end of the day, we look at the parts that we missed or we could have improved on. We don't congratulate ourselves on the parts that we got. So it's a constant improvement and a lot of reflection, that we have a logical, deductive mind, and we have a memory of detail, and we drive everybody nuts with the detail. Now, when I pronounce it Sharon instead of Sharon, it also means that it can be better at leading or in situations where I have to take the lead, whereas Sharon is more comfortable if they're not the boss.
Oh, that's fascinating. So understanding the meaning of your name gives insights into your abilities and your limitations. So I guess you could give us a few examples, but what I'm curious about is, does your knowledge come from both observation and study, or is it one of those gifts that you already had a feeling with, because you are very intuitive, I think?
I started out because I noticed when I was doing the seating chart in my 7th year of teaching that my brain was saying, oh, don't put this one next to that one, and helping me do the seating chart. And so when it dawned on me that that's how my brain normally works once I know the kids, but I didn't know them, I only had their names, I wrote down everything I was getting. And then at spring break or winter break, sorry, I looked at it and I went, okay, there's a lot of truth here. So my brain is thoroughly trained in patterns, being a math major and having my master's degree. So I thought, okay, my brain's picked up some kind of a pattern that's hidden in a name. How do I make what's unconscious conscious? So there was a lot of observation and trial and error and questioning people. And there was a lot during meditations that came to me. So it was a combination.
That's so fascinating, because I tend to think, I don't think of intuition as patterns, but it is. Like you had intuitions about these people when you said, oh, my brain has a pattern. And then you broke it down from that. And that's probably is from your mathematical mind. So how many years did it take you to understand this?
It took 15 years to figure out the patterns. And then I was already being invited around the world to talk on spirituality and to give spiritual readings. And so when I was invited, I would say, hey, can I also introduce this concept? Because I really thought, Julia, that if I'm all washed up or it's not accurate, somebody's going to call me on it. But instead, everywhere I went, they said, and where do we find out more information? So after I tested it in over 70 countries around the world over a 3-year time period, I came back and wrote the book, the first one.
Right. Well, this is highly personal information, I guess, with people's names. So that's really interesting. I was going to ask if you'd tell us the meaning of the first vowel and the names, if you just go over the vowels, because I think that's fascinating.
Okay, I'm going to give you a brief description of each, because if not, it would take like 2.5 hours.
Okay, we don't want that.
Okay, so in the vowel A, these are the workaholics, the worker bees. You always want first vowel of an A working for you, because if the job's not done at the end of the day, even if it's not their job and they know it needs to get done, they will stay late and get it done, even if it's somebody else's job. Okay, and they only have 2 speeds, 100 miles an hour and 0. Okay, so they'll keep going and going and going until they drop. And then it's like, oh, could somebody else please go to the bathroom for me? I don't want to have to get up. So that's the first vowel of an A. And there's a lot of observation skills in A. There's a quest for spirituality in the first vowel of an A. And they are visual learners. And then, and very practical. And then we go to the first vowel of an E. And the first vowel of the E are the detectives and the people. They come from their heart. Everybody comes and dumps their problems on them because they know that they're very good listeners. And they usually give very good suggestions to the other people. They also have aesthetic eyes, which means that if a picture's crooked on the wall, they're going to walk by and straighten it out because it just looks better. They will notice what people wear, if they're dressed appropriately, if they've done their makeup or not. They may not say anything, but they always notice. And so I always look at, if you're a first vowel of an A and only care about being covered and comfortable in your clothing, then you take shopping with you a first vowel of an E, because they're not going to let you buy anything that doesn't also look good. Okay. So then I go to the I. And in the I, these are the people that learn from family and through relationships. So I always joke with them that the good, bad, ugly, and fabulous all comes from the family, because they're going to major in the family relationships. And some of the I's will say, well, I don't have any issues with my family. I don't talk to them. And I think, okay,
Right.
that is
Like,
not
that's
an issue,
non-issue.
right?
Yeah, non-issue.
Not an issue. I dealt with it. I don't talk with them. Anyway, it's very important for them to be included. So if you're living with somebody with the first vowel of an I always say, even if you're going to the kitchen, you say, I am going to the kitchen. You want anything while I'm there? Can I get you anything? Or if you're going to the grocery store, you say, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want to go with me, or do you want me to get you anything? You always are including them or inviting them in, because that causes them to feel loved. Okay. And they're very independent, and they are the natural leaders. Okay. So they don't take direction well. They'd rather give the direction. These people are better off working for themselves in most cases, and if not, having a lot of autonomy.
Right.
Then we go to the first vowel of an O. And the first vowel of the O are the assigned leaders, or the CEOs. And they're the people that, even when they're incredibly young, love to boss everybody else around. They just take charge in its natural form, and they want things done a specific way and their way. Okay, so sometimes they will clash with the I's, just because the I's are so independent. Okay, so they are the assigned bosses, and they value everything by the financial attachment to that object. So if you have an O in your life, you want to make sure that you're giving them gifts that do not have a money value, that they can't look up online and say, okay, what did this cost? Okay, and the best gift literally for somebody with an O is money. Because if everybody gave them money, they have expensive tastes, then they can go put all that monies together and go get themselves something really expensive.
Right.
Okay. And O's are natural nurturers. They usually have pets because they have all this excess love that have to go somewhere. Okay. So they're wonderful at taking care of others, but they expect loyalty in return. And if somebody's not loyal, it's very hurtful for them. Okay. And they're the ones that can multitask better than any other letter. Then we come to the first vowel of a U, like you have, Julia, and U's are just fun. It's the way they talk, the way they express themselves. It's their adventuresome spirit, that they're willing to try something new, that they are entertaining in their mannerisms or their speech patterns. And so you find that some, like the actor's actor, the ones that all the other actors look up to, usually have that first vowel of a U. They have a sense of humor. So do the E's, by the way. The E's and the U's carry humor, but the U's have a sense of humor. They have a playfulness. They remind us that we're here to have a good time, not just work and not just suffer. Okay. And so U's are great, and a great gift for a U is a new experience, because they have a really short attention span. They get bored really easily.
Yes, I do get bored really easily. I'm usually doing 3 or 4 projects at once. So as soon as I'm bored, I'll go work on another one.
Right. And that's so typical of the first vowel of a U. And then you go to the first vowel of a Y, and these are your most gracious hosts. They're always looking out, making sure everybody is okay. However, they have a very thin layer that you can violate without knowing it, where they take it personally, and then they want to get revenge because somehow you hurt their feelings, or you hurt their friends' feelings, or whatever. So you're always more careful around a Y, that you're making sure that you're gracious and always thinking of everybody else, that you're not stepping on any toes. And Y's like things that are very unique. So if you're giving a gift to a Y, it's usually handmade so that they can claim that nobody else has one like them. Okay, but the Y's can be the boss's boss if they so choose. Now, some Y's do and other Y's don't, but know that they have a capability of being the boss's boss, and they are the only ones that the O's will listen to.
Well, that's fascinating. I was so interested in that because I know in your newsletter you put in some information about gifts around Christmas time, and I thought that it was so accurate.
Well, thank you, but that's the first vowel. There's so much information in that first vowel.
That's what I mean. That's why I was curious about the other part, because that does tell you a lot. And one thing that I know, because I used to spend hours and hours writing poetry, is that the shape of the letters and the position of the letters changes the energy. And I'm assuming you're saying the same thing about letters. The way
No, that's totally different, Julia. See, I'm fascinated by that, because I look at it as simply the placement.
Right.
Where is it? It's not how it's written. It's not what it looks like. It's just, where is it sitting?
Right. So it's like, to me, because I'm very visual, the combination of the sounds and the visual, to me, make things move or have different shapes, like if you're looking at the stanzas or the way a line reads. So yeah, so every time you change a vowel or every time you change a consonant. And I also found that, particular consonants for different moods. Like awakening is one thing, horrifying is another one, stern is another one. I mean, those are just short words. Or what was it? Aqua was the one I loved as a small child, because I thought the word sounded the way the color looks.
Well,
Then,
I know that I've changed some of the ways that I write my letters because I always want to be going forward in life and not retracing steps.
right.
Okay. I don't even back up well. Like if I'm driving a truck or driving, pulling something behind me, it's like, oh, don't ask me to back up. I can go forward just fine. And so I've started looking at my letters and which ones end going backwards versus going forward. So an example would be an O. When we usually start the O at the top and we go left first, and then we come back up and we stop, and then we go forward and go right. So instead, I've learned it took a lot of training. That was my hardest letter, but I go right first and then come back up around and keep going right. And I think that's really important, how we form them so that we're either backtracking or we're flowing in the flow of going forward.
I don't know what I do, because I never wrote like other people. They finally gave up and just told me to do it my way.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. But that was in the 7th grade. So it took a long time for me to get there, which is pretty funny. So what are the main things that you want people to get from your reading of their names?
I start with the same thing the first time somebody gets a name reading. And that is, I go over why your soul chose your mother to learn from and why your soul chose your dad. We can always find the negatives for ourselves. I want to go through, why did your soul pick these people? What were you supposed to gain from having these two as parents? Okay. And what's really cool, Julie, is at the end of the reading, or the end of that portion of the reading, most people will start looking at their parents differently. Because we have these idealized viewpoints of what our parents should have, could have, would have been.
Right.
Okay. Oh. And so anyway, I do the parents first, and then I go through with the attributes or the strengths that are in the name, what you came in with, what you're good at. And it surprises me how many people don't recognize their own gifts and talents. So that's when I go through that next. And then I go through the 7 subsets of your overall purpose of being here. Because if you can break it down into the 7, and if you accomplish those 7, then you've got the overall goal accomplished. And so then I give the main purpose of why you're here. And that takes me a half an hour.
I'm sure.
And then after that, I talk fast. And then after that, I go through, like, if they have questions, I always say, your name holds so much information. If you could ask the universe anything, what do you want to know? And then I say also, you can compare 2 names and see how to improve a relationship or why that person's in your life. And so then I ask for 5 minutes to give me to answer thoroughly any of those questions or any of the people comparison.
So all this in 30 minutes or an hour?
Well, the 30 minutes is your basis. Okay. And then as you give me more time, then I can answer questions, or I can, compare a name with yours, or give you your timing. Your timing is in your name. I was just last week, I was doing a lot back to back. I was traveling and I was sponsored. And one of the guys was a good astrologer. I didn't know that. And I gave him the name reading for an hour. And he said, oh my gosh, it's like you read my chart to me. He says, you're giving me the same information that's sitting in the astrology chart, and it's just cut and clear, and here it is. And I look at that and I think God gave us so many different ways to be able to remember who we are and why we're here.
Right. To find that map that somehow or other we lost after we got here, but was probably clear before we incarnated. So the 7 things that you go over for people who are awakening now and moving into their spiritual gifts, they always say, so what should I do? I'm always like, begin with sending love and light. But if they have a real calling, that might be a good thing for them to look at, right?
Yes, that's in a name, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah. So that's
you
pretty
know,
neat.
and even what jobs are going to satisfy them and where they're leaning.
Mm-hmm.
That's in a name. And the other thing that's cool that's in a name is your predispositions to health. If the health combination shows up in the last name, you've inherited it. And so
Oh,
whether it
fascinating.
activates or not is up to you, but it's in your DNA. And then if it's in the middle name, you're bringing it in as unresolved from the last life. And if
Right.
it's in your first name, if you're not making wise choices, you have a propensity to go in this direction and have this illness.
Right. Just like astrology, any place you're not balanced, it's going to show up. But you're
Correct.
probably going to see it in the chart before you ever grow up and find out about it.
Well, and same thing in the name.
Mm-hmm. That's what I meant. They're similar. Okay. What I wanted
Yeah.
to say is though, so there are two things that you said that I thought were so important. The first one is I'm like you. I don't think most people recognize the positive things about themselves. Like they probably have 4 or 5 things they think they're good at, and they don't see the other aspects of that. What do you do to encourage people to believe that and to see that about themselves?
Well, Julia, what's so much fun is as you're reading the name, they're like checking it off, like, oh my gosh, yes. Or especially when you're describing their parents to them, they're going, oh yeah, you got that one. And so as I go through the parents, I think people become believers. And so that helps then when I go through what their strengths are and what gifts they came and how they can show up. And then the timing is in the name. So let's say that gift doesn't show up until they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, that you can say that this is coming.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty neat and that's fun. And I want to go back to parents because I think it's important. Um, most of us, in my opinion, the psychic ones or the awakened ones, I think we had to search pretty hard for parents that would give us all the genetics that we needed to be able to use it with intuitive abilities. There are
I,
things I really like and dislike about my parents. I do love them, but I'm so grateful that they could give me the genetics that I can handle it.
I look at a lot of people that you really appreciate what your parents gave you. You may not approve of their modalities. That shows up in the name. But I think a lot of us that are intuitive or waking up or whatever had to come in on more love. So if love between the two people were present, that made a good entry for us.
What a
And
perfect comment, because my parents were madly in love when I was conceived and born.
right. And I think all of us needed a higher level of love vibration and able to get our soul willing to come in.
I think you're right. I think we all sort of knew what was coming and we're like, oh, I don't know. They're like, yeah, but look what we're giving you. Okay, I'll go. I think you're right.
And then many of us gave ourselves incredible hardships as children so that we would be forced to look within and go spiritual and look for answers.
Right. And I think another thing that you said, because that's really important, they say a lot of people who have intuitive gifts choose to get as much karma out of the way by the time they're 25 or 30. Like they go through terribly difficult things, but they've completed that karma so it doesn't interfere when they start coming into their gifts as an adult. Would you tend to agree with that, or do you have a different opinion?
Well, I'm going to go back to the study of religions and different. I look at where do they overlap, not where they're different than all the rest, but where do they overlap? Because I think especially if there were only 7 religions on the planet, before I jokingly say that they multiplied and divided and everybody chose their own and made it up, all 7 agreed in certain areas. And I look at that's the core to give us the belief. And one of the things they believed in, besides that we impress upon our parents or whomever's going to be naming us what we want to be called, so we name ourselves, they also agreed that the person had until their birthday at age 21 to relive, remember all of their previous experiences, so that at age 21, they are now creating for new.
Right.
And that's why our forefathers said, you're not an adult until you're 21. We don't want you voting until you're 21. We don't want you drinking or smoking or whatnot until you're 21, because they wanted the soul to have that chance to relive or remember everything that it needed and what it had learned previously before it started anew and made new decisions and then took the consequences of those.
In other words, we go through a certain set of vibrations, which changes us. And then at that point, we're more free to make choices or different choices.
Right, because we've relearned everything that we have learned from previous lifetimes.
I tend to agree with you, or whichever ones we're working out this lifetime.
Right. So
You know,
that's why 21, the birthday at 21 is such a huge celebration.
you made it. Well, we've been talking with Sharon Lynn Wyeth about the power and the meaning of your name. It's really quite fascinating and detailed. She says, know the name, know the person. When we come back, we'll talk more and go more deeply into the meaning of names. We'll talk about healing and spirituality and Sharon's books. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. I'm talking with Sharon Lynn Wyeth about the power and the meaning of your name. Sharon says, know the name, know the person, and she's given us incredible information about the vowels in our names, how we get along with people, what our preferences are, and she's going to tell us more about how it works. So stay tuned. It's great information. Sharon, tell us a little bit about your books, and then we're going to talk about animal names and we'll go into healing. But tell us what you're writing and what you've already written.
Okay, so the first book was Know the Name, Know the Person. And it took it 6 years to become a bestseller, but it did it all on its own. So that part I'm proud of. I'm very pleased that there was enough interest and people found it valuable. And so Know the Name, Know the Person is all about the personality and how to interpret it. And then came Know the Name, Know the Spirit. And Know the Spirit is all about the soul's purpose. And then came Know the Name, Know How to Connect. And that one is accessible absolutely for free, because I think it's so important we can improve our relationships just knowing those first vowels in the first name. And so you can access that one on my website, knowthename.com. And then, and that one's a skinny one, where the other ones are really fat, because, and everybody said you should have split this up more and made it into like Know the Name, Know the Person into 2 books. And I said, you know, with my fairness issue, you need to have a complete system all in one book. I think it's not fair to make them have a second book to learn what should have been in the first book.
Right.
So, and then I wrote a book that's a tribute to my dad, and it's called The Itty Bitty Book of What Happens When. And it's literally how dad taught us to think and how to analyze and how to look at things differently. And it's really cool. It's just simple things like, here's a situation, here's your choices of what you're going to do. You know, pick one or choose something else. How would you handle this situation? And then the third part of every chapter is, this is how dad told us to handle it. And then the fourth part is how it showed up in my life, you know, and how it saved the day type of thing. And what's really cool is I've gotten a lot of letters from people in their 70s and 80s from reading that book. And it's a very thin book, very fast read. And they've said, I didn't even know everything that was in this book. And so anyway, it's just a tribute to dad. And then my 5th book will be coming out not that far in the future, definitely this year, and it's called Know the Name, Know the Health. And it's how you predetermine what you need to know about the health of your body, what you've inherited, what your predispositions are, simply from the placement of the letters in your name.
Okay, so I said I would be the guinea pig. Julia Griffin, what can you tell me?
Okay, so one, Julia, you're absolutely brilliant. Okay, so
Yay.
you have both what I call street knowledge, okay, school knowledge, and intuition. You combine them all, and that's what causes you to be brilliant. And Jessica, by the way, also has that same brilliance, because that's anybody that starts with the first vowel, the first letter of a J in their name. Okay, that's where I'm getting that from. And often the J's will take a while to be comfortable with how intuitive they are or how they're utilizing those intuition skills. You know, sometimes they'll reject it at first, depending on the other letters, but it's always there. It's available for them. Okay, and the challenge in the J, since we're doing that, is not to try to dummy yourself down to meet everybody else and get along better, but instead help everybody else come up to your level. So you find a lot of J's that will use alcohol to lower their vibration, or something else trying to lower their vibration. And so that challenge is always, nope, raise everybody else's up, don't go down. Then we come to the first vowel of a U, which is that entertaining piece, how you look at things differently, how you express yourself, that adventuresome spirit, wanting to try new adventures, have new experiences. It's also in that first vowel of a U that we find that these people are exploring spirituality or questioning life more than some of the rest. Okay, so that becomes very important. And often in the first vowel of a U, again, depending on the rest of the letters, they can go really deep into spirituality and come up with insights that the rest of us go, where did you get that? How did you pull that from here? So that's kind of interesting. And then we go to the next letter of L, and L in the middle of your name says, L is always self-confidence. And in the middle of the name says you'll have it your entire life. You were born with it, you'll keep it, and you won't lose it. Good. So depending on where the L lands in the name, it'll say when you got it, and if you're going to lose it and regain it, or if you lose it and you don't regain it. Or if it's toward the end of the name, like a Lionel, where the L's are at the end, then it means every year gets better than the year before because you gain in self-confidence every year.
That's good.
And then this is Reader's Digest version of every letter, by the way. So, and then we come to the I, which is independence. In that position, second to last letter, it's literally saying you want to be independent. You do not want to have to be dependent on anybody else, that you have certain things you're really going to like done a certain way. And that's just tough. Either, join the crowd or get out of my way.
True.
Okay. And then the last letter of A in the first name indicates that you thought it was important to be liked. So you've worked on you and you've made yourself likable. But if somebody does not like you, you're not going to change who you are to get them to like you. They're the ones that are missing out, not you.
That was a long process, but it's true.
Yeah. And it normally is. And that's for the names that end in A and Y. They're the ones that have that challenge. Okay, then we go to the last name of Griffin. And so I need to ask, is it birth or married?
Birth.
Birth. Okay, so that says that you were around people in your youth that drank too much or did some kind of abuse to their own bodies. And so you had to be a witness of that so that you could choose whether you wanted to continue that tradition or not.
Not my parents, but being part Native American and Irish, there were a lot of alcoholics on the periphery, but my parents didn't drink.
Yeah. So it just says that around, like, the last name is always your environment up until you're 18.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you had people that drank in your environment.
Right.
And then it says that I love the R's. I look for R's in a name. I think, if it was my preference, I would put an R in everybody's name, because R's mean that you have a rebellious spirit. So the people around you, because it was last name, the people around you had rebellious spirits. So you could copy that and adapt it, or you could reject it. Okay. And so those rebellious spirits don't like being told what to do, and they're not going to believe something just because somebody said it. They go find out for themselves. And because of that, those are the people that develop discernment over time.
Right. Because you make a lot of mistakes when you just run around doing everything without listening to other people.
Right. So you take in what they have to say, but then you determine it for yourself. Yes, I'm going to accept this. No, I'm going to reject this. And then I'm going to go have my life experience and learn from that. Okay.
No, I'm laughing because I spent an entire summer deciding to disprove the new moon, full moon, and planning with astrological signs theory. And all I did was prove it. So now I'm like the world's biggest believer in it. I kept notes every single day. Hilarious.
Okay, so then the first vowel of an I says that you were taught family, blood is thicker than water.
That's exactly true.
Because it's all about those relationships. And so your parents thought it was very important to have a family unit, and that you had responsibility with family and with the other members of family, even if you didn't care for them. You still have a duty to those people.
True.
Okay. Then the double F means that we can be hoarders. We can get around us more than what we need. So some people in your environment, doesn't have to be parents, but you got exposed to hoarders where people would have excess. And so that you could decide, do you want to copy that and duplicate it, or do you want to not be that way? But it was in your environment.
I would tend to disagree, but then I suddenly remembered that everyone in my family had a huge attic of beautiful furniture that they didn't use. Yeah. Strange hoarding.
It's a form of hoarding, and it shows
Yeah.
up differently depending on the other letters and names. Okay. But it basically means that we keep more than what we're using or need.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you get that next I, and again, it's the second to last position, just like in Julia. So that just strengthens that everybody around you wanted to be independent. Nobody wanted to be dependent.
That's true.
Okay. And then I love names that end in an N, but then I'm prejudiced because all three of my birth names end in an N. So obviously I liked that one. But N is anal retentive to the details and really good memories and organizational skills. So the people around you had good memories and good organizational skills and could drive you nuts with the details.
All true. That's great. So I wanted to skip to your book in health. So tell us about your book that's coming up, because that's pretty fascinating.
So I start by disputing other people's theories on health and what causes good health and not good health. And there are people that I really admire, you know, in their philosophy and what they're sharing, except for that a lot of people say, oh, poor you got this illness or this disease or whatnot, and look what was done to you or happened to you, or, you know, whatever. And I take the position that if you're a victim of your health, then you're powerless. And so to me, that's not truth. Because you're in charge, you're creating your world. And so it literally starts with disputing other people's philosophy and saying, here's the gold in what they taught, and here's the part I want to discount because you're the one in charge. And if you understand why you've created something in your life and how you created it, then you also have the power to uncreate it and create something differently.
Well, I've actually seen you do that. So let's add that to it. You've overcome a lot of health issues in the last year or two.
Well, yeah, because I had a Uranus square Pluto in my chart, and it just unexpected, whatever. And yeah, but it moves out after March. So I'm getting close to good.
Good.
So anyway, so first I wanted to empower people. And then I wanted to discuss different things that influence our decisions around health and how to look at them differently. Okay. And then I go into, these are common things that we all of us can create, like a cold or a flu or whatnot. And what causes, what's the feeling behind it? What's the thought behind it? And then how our thoughts kind of twist our feelings and cause them to become emotions, which put them on a mobile strip, which causes them to repeat and repeat and repeat until the body says enough already and reacts.
Right.
And so that the foundation of all of our illnesses in our body are beliefs that got attached to feelings. Instead of just observing the feeling and experiencing it, or having a thought and allowing it to flow through us, we attach them and cause an emotion to occur. And then that emotion affects us.
Right.
And
because
then
our body always tells us the truth. So even if we're saying, oh, I don't really feel that way, everything's great, your body may show you that there are other things that you need to look at.
You know, so I think that's really, really important to know what the common ailments are. So that's one chapter. And then I do another chapter that literally says, here's all the letters and the combinations and their placement and what our doctors have said, you know, here's the names of the illnesses. And I think sometimes they give a lot of names for the same thing. But anyway, I just do a chart type of thing that says these letters in this position, they go with this disease or this illness or this whatever. And then the next chapter goes into, okay, here's a list of all these ailments. And here was the feeling. Here was the thought. When they got together, they created this emotion. And this means this is what you came to learn, and this is how you undo it.
Right. And sometimes that means letting go of things like what our parents told us, or how we felt when we were 4, or when we were sick at 21 and got a break from life because we were in bed for a month. Those patterns stay there.
Well, and Julia, have you noticed how so many parents give more attention to a child when they're sick? So if the child wants attention, even as an adult, they get sick.
Oh, definitely. And another good example is like a child with a sore throat. You have that again and again because you can't say how you feel. It has to do with the throat chakra and suppressing emotion. So yeah.
And you get more attention. So let's say if I want more attention, all I have to do is have an ailment and then I'll get attention. Where my parents were so different. My mom would say, this is an inconvenience on my schedule for the day. You're getting ignored other than to get fed. And here's a bell if you need me, but if not, I'm not coming around. And my dad, being a doctor, he would always say, I have a shot for that.
Oh,
so
no.
you knew if you were sick enough that you were willing to take a shot, because whether it was real or placebo, I don't know. But I know that anytime we were going to stay home from school, we got a shot.
Wow.
So Dad's feeling was you have to be really sick to be willing to take that shot in your butt.
I agree. There's no question about that. And so then you can look up these tendencies and make changes internally and externally.
Yes, but I think knowing what caused it empowers you. Because if you know the details of this is what created this response in my body, then you're empowered to uncreate it. And that knowledge is also there.
Right. So that sounds really fascinating. So we were going to do animal names. So give us some examples of animal names that are good. I'll just say I have a puppy that I named River, and you tell me that was very rebellious, and it is. He doesn't quite know his name. Maybe I should change it. I'm thinking
On the other hand, the people that are rebellious always figure out the truth for themselves.
I can see that.
So I love the R's, but you also have in the name River that this puppy is going to be very sexually active or want to have that part of his life very active.
Oh, so get him neutered right away.
Exactly. So he can play without consequences.
Making me blush. Okay, but you think it's an okay name, or should I change it?
Yes, because it's very loyal to family.
Okay.
And he's going to be just adorable and cute and charismatic, and everybody's going to adore this puppy with that name.
Good. Okay, so I have a cat named Blue, who's half Siamese, and he's very shy but sweet. Would that work with Blue?
Yes, because Blue says, though, I'm not going to follow anybody else's rules, just my own.
That's fine. We have that going on with everyone in my life.
But it's in that BL combination is like, nope, the rules are for everybody else, but not for me. Okay. And then the U is the first vowel and it matches yours. So I always say if you get more around you with the first vowel the same as yours, it's very compatible, with the exception of O's with O's, because then you have 2 Indian chiefs and no Indian. Okay.
That's fun.
So that's playfulness.
Right.
And that's fun. And then the E at the end of the name is generosity of spirit.
And he is very, very sweet. So that's perfect.
So as we name our pets and we constantly call them that, that is a vibration in the sound, and they're reacting to that sound or that vibration, and then they match it. So our pets become their names, just as every time somebody says our name and pronounces it correctly, that vibration is coming to us and reinforcing our life blueprint, which is written in our name.
Right. Just like peace, harmony, love. When we say those things, you can actually feel them. And so those sets of vibrations that are associated with us are somewhat the same way.
Yes. And Julie, since you're mentioning that, I know so many people that say, I don't want war, but we don't hear the negatives. So that's really giving energy to war. So instead of saying what you don't want, let's say what we do choose, and say, I'm choosing peace. And I would also recommend not to say the word want, because want means lack, and then that means you're asking to lack that item some more.
We could say, I see peace. The other thing that I found that seems to work well with this is harmony. When I visualize harmony, I think because so much of their country is agricultural, I can feel the earth respond to that.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. And I'm sure you have more ideas on how we create what most of us, I shouldn't say all, what most of us are seeking, which is the opportunities for everyone to be at their best and have a roof over their head and food in their belly and to be able to contribute in some way so that they feel fulfilled.
I agree. I visualize that every single day, everywhere, because everything would change so much with that vibration of harmony. It would eliminate so many negative emotions. So one thing that I'm thinking about is as we're moving into awakening and an increased light level, a lot of people need to have help with their spirituality. And that's something that you can do in helping them identify a spiritual direction, isn't it?
Yes, and where their gifts and talents are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it was really interesting on my very last radio show. I had a guest on, and the caller called in and said, out of all of these modalities, you know, which one would be most appropriate for me? And the guest started talking in general terms and not specific to her. And so when the guest was done, I literally said, in your name, it says Reiki. You know,
That's hilarious.
it was like, I got to get that answer, you know, it's that detailed part. And then she started laughing and she says, yeah, I'm on level 2 already. And I said, there you go. See, you didn't need me to confirm that for you, but that's it. That's your direction. But our names do tell us that.
Sometimes you need that confirmation to know whether or not you're going in the right direction. I know sometimes I need it, sometimes everyone does. And I think while I'm saying this, some people have different occupations, but they do spirituality part-time, or they work on it, or they work on developing themselves. That's not a career for everyone, I don't think. Do you?
Well, you think about it, I was in education for 40 years. And now I started really young. I started at age 20, so that helps.
That helps.
That helped. But for 40 years, and I was developing and reading and developing my gifts and talents and all of that the entire time. And I think that helped me be a better teacher or better educator, because as I improved, I mean, I remember the year when it was my 8th year of teaching, when I was getting into this non-judgment piece in my spiritual growth. And I literally taught all 150 students, it's just the way it is. Can we just accept it that it's just the way it is? And we're going to help each other, that anytime we hear a statement of judgment come out in this room, we're all going to look at that person and go, it's just the way it is.
That's fun.
You know, so
That's
over
really
the years,
fun.
whatever I was working on, I literally would say, okay, guys, this year, this is our focus.
Well, that does take you completely out of victim consciousness when you say this is what it is. Because sometimes I say, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it was conscious, whether it was semi-conscious or unconscious, you manifested where you are. So let's manifest something better. You know, let's work on us, not the outer part and the people around us. And that does help.
Well,
So,
and
go ahead.
one of the years I did, Julia, that was one of my favorites, when I said, okay, this year we're just going to constantly ask, how does life get better than this? So if something not so good happens, we're going to say, and how does life get better than this? But if something wonderful happens, we're still inviting, how does life get better than this?
Or how do you repeat what's wonderful? That's quite the trick if you can do it. So Sharon, we're running out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being with us. Could you please share your website and let people know where you are and what you offer? Because there's a lot of material on your website.
Well, the website has just kept growing over the years, but it's knowthename.com. So if you are someplace where you cannot write that down and you get home later or someplace where you can, and you go, oh, I need to remember the name of that website. I need to know the name. And you go, oh, that was it, knowthename.com. And so on the website, you've got access to the 3rd book that I wrote absolutely free. And it's on any page but the home page. And then I offer my books for sale and classes for sale that are online, and you can take any time. And then after every section of the class, you get a conference with me, because I want to answer your personal questions before you go on. That's the teacher part of me. You know, I just don't like online where you don't get that interaction with the person that's presenting. And so I offer that. And then there's a lot of workshops or classes that are there also. And you can also learn how to take, how to do namology.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening, where you can experience a higher vibration and new state of mind. You can find me on my website, onetrueself.com. And I hope you'll come back and join me again. We're on the second and the fourth Wednesdays of every month. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.